Our third session today examines regulatory compliance and risk management in the digital age. So, it's a critical concern for companies, regulators, and the legal practitioners alike. I'm sure you'll agree. So, would you like to welcome to the stage Timur? He's a compliance officer for data privacy, and he's moderating the panel. Welcome, Timur. Next, we have our panelists for this next session. Please welcome Pavle. He's a tech law problem solver and legal manager for Abacus Legal in Netherlands. And Ganna, he is a CEO co-founder for Manimama law firm in Poland. And Bushra Asif, legal manager for Sadiq Ahmed Al Dariza and Bahrain. Mary, who's the head of corporate legal services, Armenia. And Amelia again, founding partner. And finally, Giles, founder of Pavle Strategy UK. Please welcome to the stage.
Thank you for your kind introduction. It's a great honor and honestly a challenge to have a session just prior to our lunch, right? So we'll try to be precise in terms of timing. And we are glad to see everyone. Our topic for today is called Regulatory Compliance and Risk Management in the Digital Age. So we will discuss things that are on agenda probably for everyone. I've been in compliance for 17 years, but we never heard about crypto assets and other interesting things, tokenization. We will talk about that. We will talk about practices from different countries globally that might be used in our daily life, or at least you will find out a lot of new things. Or if you are in specific industries, please feel free to ask questions to our distinguished panelists. We will also talk about AI, and I believe we have a deck about AI generated by
AI.
Thanks, Pavle. Good. So it works, right?
We'll see.
Good. I have just one question before we get started. Do you have an experience of working for the Prime Minister of the UK? No? Not many hands raised? No? Do you think we have someone who has this experience?
I know.
Who?
The person sitting next to me.
Yes, we have Gilles who will talk about crisis management, and I believe he works well. He used to work for Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. So let's get started, and we will start with Emilia. Emilia will talk about Brazil and South American practices in terms of crypto regulation. So welcome to the future.
Thank you, Timur. Well, good morning. It's difficult to talk about a hungry audience, but I will try to make it interesting. Well, our panel is about regulatory compliance and risk management in the digital age. My experience with digital age is working in the cryptocurrency area and blockchain. I have a master degree in University of Nicosia in digital currencies and blockchain technology. And in 2016, I was falling in love about Bitcoin. And because of this, I never worked with any area of law after this. And I would like to talk about an experience with virtual assets market in Brazil and our regulation. under the perspective of regulatory and compliance. When I started to work in this environment, when everything was filled, as we said in Brazil, this was a very unregulated area. But why was an unregulated area if services of intermediation, for example, was already regulated? The technology behind Bitcoin and crypto assets is different, is modern, is new. But the services provided by the companies in this area are not so new. Are intermediation, buy and sell, custody. And I don't know if you, but I saw these services being rendered by a lot of companies before the digital area. And these companies are called banks. Then, when the market started, the crypto area started in Brazil, everybody was saying, whoa, we are in an area that is not regulated. We can do everything. Is it correct? No, it's not correct. But of course that crypto was not regulated, but the services that the crypto companies rendered were regulated before. But the companies has this feeling that, wow, we are in an unregulated area and we can do anything, including scams, including frauds. And this was what we saw in Brazil in 2015, 2016, 2017. A lot of consumers was captured in these kind of schemes. And it was terrible, because everybody says, oh, it was an unregulated area, but it could be solved just using the same rules, the same regulation that other companies used that made the same services, intermediation, custody. But when I talk about it in the events, in the classes, in the Congress, when I went to the Brazilian Congress to explain about Bitcoin and to help them to create the regulation, I said, well, we already know about the rules for this market. It's the banking rules. It's the payment institution rules. Only the technology behind the crypto is new. But the services are not so new. Let's regulate it as the other companies are regulated. But they said, no, we have a lot of things to regulate because the necessity of the regulator in Brazil is very big. Then they wanted to create new rules. It takes almost 10 years. And during this period, a lot of bad things happened. In 2015, started the process to regulate this area. And we could saw a lot of terrible proposals of regulation. Since prohibited the use of crypto until banks can do these services. But the banks were not exactly the companies that were working in this field at this moment. Who were working in this field at this moment? Small companies, startups, fintechs. Why the regulation will avoid to keep these companies in the market, permitting only the banks to do this kind of services? We need to regulate in order to permit the little companies, the native crypto companies to establish themselves after the regulation. Then, he started the work to regulate this field. I like the regulation in Brazil. It's a good proposal. It's not so restricted than MiCA, and we'll have our colleague talking about MiCA. I'm anxious about it. It's not so restricted than MiCA, because I think that in some points MiCA, the regulation to crypto to Europe, is very restrictive and is not so open, unfortunately, than Australia, for example. I love the regulation of Australia. But it's a good regulation. All companies will have license, needed to obtain a license to operate. It's separated what is a token, what is a security, analyzing the asset behind the digital representation as the same concept of Europe, of the same concept of America, but in a less conservative way than in US. Then it's a good regulation that will be in force in the end of this year. And the regulator for this subject in Brazil is the Brazilian Central Bank. Nothing is perfect, of course. But what we are expecting for the next year, the regulation process is not fair sometimes. A lot of native companies will be put out of this market. Our regulation process is suffered, not only in the crypto, in the financial segment, in a lot of segments. If you see in the cannabis segment in the United States, for example, we could saw the same situation. A lot of people that were in the market before the regulation was put out of the market, and only the big companies in the agriculture could achieve the requirements for the license. And it will be the same in the crypto segment. But we are sure that the frauds and scams will be avoided. What I believe in terms of compliance, we cannot demonize the way. We need to criminalize the hidden behavior for money laundering, for terrorism, but not the way. The way could be used to good things and to bad things. What we have to criminalize is the human behavior behind the situation, but not the way. The way could be used for good things and for bad things. The Brazilian landscape for the next year in crypto asset segment will be very favorable. Then come to Brazil and open your crypto asset company. Thank you.
Mila, thanks a lot, and this very motivating slogan in the end. And when it's the best time to come to Brazil? Summer?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow! Yes!
We have a lot of clients.
All right. Very brief question. You have said that the regulation that we have in Brazil, and probably it looks like something that we have in other neighboring countries, is more relaxed, more stringent compared to MiCA. That is, for who doesn't know, it's a European regulation about crypto assets. If we know basics of MiCA, would it mean that we will more or less understand the Brazilian regulation, or it's just two different universes?
No, it's very similar. But for example, MiCA has some restrictions related to technology. For example, it's not possible by MiCA the self-custodian of stablecoins. When someone needs to receive a stablecoin, for example, cannot put in your own wallet and keep with yourself. This is the main concept behind the crypto. And in the Brazilian regulation, they try to put this position in the law, but the market does not accept. Why? Because this is the nature of the technology. It's not possible to put this in the law. Law cannot go against the technology, the nature of the technology. Oh, but how can we control the evasion of money, for example? I don't care. You do your job, Brazilian Central Bank, and try to solve the problem. We need to work with the technology the way that it is. Then in some terms, it's not so restrictive, but it's very similar to MiCA.
All right, thank you. And now for those who didn't hear about MiCA, we have a chance to hear from Mary about the regulation that we have in Europe in terms of crypto assets. And Mary, could you please say some words about yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. After the optimism of Emilia, I am obliged to revert to MiCA and tell you a little bit about it. Well, firstly, I'm Mary Aslanyan, and I come from Armenia, and I'm an in-house legal counsel in a commercial bank, a leading commercial bank, which is called the Miria Bank. In fact, why the interest in MiCA? Because in the realm of the fastly evolving innovation, we cannot stay apart of it. So the clients, public representatives, they have interest in the cryptocurrency, and what happened in the recent years when the clients reverted to banks saying that they would, for example, ask the bank to serve a banking transaction, the answer would be a no, because the banks were not encouraged to engage in all such activities. But as the MiCA, European Union regulation on cryptocurrency, was adopted in 2022, what happened in the world was that different countries started implementing national laws that derived from MiCA. Of course, it could not be voted similarly, because we couldn't avoid adaptations that were to be made, taking into account the specificities of the country and of the legal system. So basically, after the MiCA regulation was voted in 2022, it started the different phases of its implementation. And by 2025, it's practically implemented. What it tells us about the main perspective, the pivotal role of such regulation is to create a unified set of rules which would be applicable in the cryptocurrency market. So basically what it does, it says that I have a major target, a major objective to ensure consumer protection, to ensure financial stability, market integrity while fostering innovation. And the last but not the least is the legal certainty that would enable the participants of the market to know exactly what's going on and what would be the legal effects if someone engages in a transaction that refers to crypto assets. So basically, to sum up what the MiCA regulation does, it's actually designed to address the growing concerns in the fast evolving market of cryptocurrency, and it does it for the crypto assets, for the market participants, which could be service providers, platform operators, exchanges, etc. MiCA regulation, it applies to all the participants of the market and to crypto assets. So if we were to sum up the coverage of MiCA regulation, we might want to say that it applies to crypto assets, to crypto asset issuers, to crypto asset service providers, to crypto asset platform operators, to crypto asset exchanges. And I didn't miss anything, did I? Well, yeah, it's part of services and the custodians as well. And I fully agree with Emilia. What MiCA does, it refers and provides legal framework for service providers, for platforms, but it doesn't say anything about maintaining your own wallet in a blockchain. So initially, why the crypto assets were very much fascinating and very much interesting for members of the society, because firstly, it enabled the participants to remain incognito, but just because there were no KYC procedures, no due deal processes, so you were entitled to just engage in a transaction without being traced or disclosed. And secondly, the crypto assets are supposed to be a digital representation of a value or of a right which is neither issued nor guaranteed by any centralized authority. So it's supposed to be independent. But by voting MiCA, it somehow alters the initial essence of crypto assets. So there is some kind of ambiguity whether the initial attractiveness of the crypto asset itself, it remains actual or it doesn't. Alongside, I would like to underline, in the light of what I just said, that crypto asset service providers are urged to comply with whole set of requirements. Firstly, it's going to be a licensed activity, so you get to apply for such license. And in some cases, when you are a legal entity of a specific sector, for example, you are a financial institution or a bank, it's going to be a very simplified process. But still, you are going to apply and you are going to either receive a license or an authorization in order to engage in service provision. Secondly, to ensure the main objective of the regulation, the consumer rights protection, it says that the service providers are urged to publish white paper, which is supposed to somewhat include a comprehensive set of data, information about the project itself, about the rights and obligations that would be derived from for the crypto asset holders, as well as to underline clearly the risks that are associated with this or that crypto asset. Well, we know in public, and even people who are not engaged in crypto-related transactions, they say that once you lose track of the crypto that you hold, you are not going to find it. So if it's the case, the white paper has to contain such data on the crypto asset. So, not to be very tiresome, the pros of the MiCA regulation, initial pros, are considered to be the consumer protection, some kind of disclosure of whatever is going to happen with you once you engage in such kind of activities, the market integrity, but on the other hand, there is a huge burden of requirements you have to comply with, which might somewhat alter the attractiveness of the market itself. And secondly, such burden might surely impede the development of innovation. Just because whenever you have much to comply with, innovation somewhat fades away or its development is impeded. Thank you very much.
Timur, if I may, I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Barry, you're not actually telling us that you believe compliance prevents innovation.
When I was doing the presentation, I had put the hat of a businesswoman on me. So yes, I do believe.
Timur, what's your opinion on that?
I'm a compliance officer. I've been a compliance officer for 70 years, and I know for sure that compliance cannot create innovation.
This is a conflict of interest.
Yes, Pavle. Sir, I have a question to you before we start. Is it a conflict of interest if you present a desk that was generated by AI?
No.
No.
Okay, in this case, please go.
Hi. First of all, everybody, thanks for your time, thanks for your attention, and thank you to your hungry bellies for keeping up with us. I'll try to keep the flow relatively ongoing. There should be a slide deck coming up. My name's Pavle Bojkovski. I'm a sole practitioner here in Amsterdam for a firm I've called Abacus Legal. And Abacus Legal basically is the packaging of 25 years of experience of resolving legal issues for technology providers and users. And that's also the practical approach I'll be trying to take in a quick presentation on AI compliance and data sovereignty. And I think that it's useful to keep in mind the reason why we're sharing a similar panel on crypto, AI, etc. And that is that we are seeing a fundamental challenge arising all around the world, and I think that the fact that we have very international audience here proves how international these challenges are. And the challenge is that it's true, business practices aren't changing. Providing a service, providing brokerage is nothing new. It's something that's been done for ages. It's something that's been regulated in the past. But the technology industry has this wonderful trait where it says, look, I have something new, something shiny. Actually, it's never been regulated, so I can do new stuff with it. And no, legislator, no, don't look, don't look here. I'm just going to use this technology, and I'm going to do wonderful things and deliver massive social improvements. It's all right. It's all true, but at the same time, you're dealing with huge risks which are generated. And then we get to the point and the question of, what's the role of AI compliance? What's the role of data sovereignty in this? And what in God's name does this have to do with MiCA? We've got some pretty clear regulatory parallels. We can see that the European Union is trying to create regulatory frameworks that are supposed to protect the interests of the public, the interests of consumers. So we see that in both MiCA and the EU AI Act. We see data sovereignty challenges. We see basic sovereignty challenges because how are you going to regulate crypto assets when crypto assets can be put on a chain and a payment can be executed anywhere between Amsterdam and Shanghai and end up in somebody's pocket in Sao Paulo? How do you comply across borders? How do you ensure that despite with the chain existing everywhere around the world, that you can actually perform your basic legal functions on that chain? Likewise with AI, we've got the challenge that you have users around the world, you have systems, we're not going to talk about where those systems are from, but we all know where they're at currently. And on the other hand, and that's also an issue to deal with, an issue to realize when you look at AI regulation. Namely, when you look at the classification of high and low risk systems. There was a great question in a previous panel, namely, how big is the risk present in using AI to deliver legal advice? Well, that's not the risk that's being regulated. That's the weird thing. You can actually use AI to design a new nuclear device, and that's a low risk activity because it does not affect the systemic risks that concern AI. So we need to keep in mind that the regulation deals with the way that AI systems are applied and put into use, how they're applied by providers, but it doesn't deal with the manner in which AI systems are used by users. So, what's the current landscape? Just like we've got a fresh regulation with MiCA, we have a relatively fresh piece of regulation with the EU AI Act. Now, one thing that you need to realize is that just like we've seen with crypto assets, you see that the industry is pushing very hard to stop the implementation of legislation. We've seen an ongoing wave of debates between business interests and the Commission on implementing stop the clock measures, so basically pausing the implementation of the AI Act. Importantly, and it's a topic close to my heart, we're seeing a focus on data sovereignty. We're seeing a focus on trying to get to grips on where services are delivered, where they're being provided, and where data is being stored. We see that the current landscape currently leaves us with cross-border compliance challenges. You see that there are very clear differences and clashes in approach between the European Union and the United States, where the European Union appears to be regulatorily heavy and the US appears to be regulatorily light. At the end of the day, the actual application of AI systems is still pretty lightly covered. And like I said, there is massive impact by industry lobbying. Now, the question is, what are your core compliance challenges? Like I said, there's the question of where does your data arise? Where does your data reside? And what's the challenge there? You have a national approach to regulation to legislation, which requires data and certain types of data to be left within a geographic locale. But on the other hand, AI is being trained on global data sets. To say that that's complicating legal compliance is a joke, because it's making things impossible. How do you deal with the fact that AI systems are being trained on databases collected without any care in the world for intellectual property rights? So how do you deal with that as far as IP breaches by the creators of basic AI systems? And also, how do you deal with the fact that these are generative systems, but the question is, do those generative systems manage to generate new content without relying on actually protected parselets? How do I know, and my answer is no, I don't know, that the graphic behind me that's being generated by Copilot isn't actually an IP protected work? I take a risk and I rely on Microsoft's indemnification. And okay, Microsoft has the pockets to indemnify me, but what happens if you're relying on a provider working with DeepSeek?
Plagiarism.
I mean, listen, plagiarism is a day-to-day problem that we're going to be stuck with. And the bigger problem is, what does this, technically there's the great question of what's going to happen to AI when it starts training itself on stuff that it generated? At what point does it just blow up and give up? That's the one thing. And the other thing is, what's the value of services? What's the value of anything if you can't control the actual specificity of what's being delivered? But there's also the question of how do you implement technical and organizational measures across jurisdictions. I won't go into the details of that because that gets too boring. There's the question of cross-border data flows, and also there's the question of algorithmic transparency, which is required, and that how that relates to the IP rights of the people who build the AI systems. So, if you require that AI algorithms become transparent, does that mean that everybody has access to those algorithms? And what does that mean to protecting the intellectual property rights of the people who made the systems? So, what are the practical solutions that we're looking at and that we're seeing in the market? What you see is, you see a trend towards federated learning and edge computing. Sounds great, but what does that mean? That basically means that systems are not learning from a central database. They're not working in a central repository. Rather, what you get is cooperating agents generating new AI knowledge, to put it that way. And also you see that AI systems are being used locally. So for instance, with systems like DeepSeek and other open source AI systems, what you're seeing is that they are being run by individuals on their own systems, under their own responsibility, and within local environments. You see data localization. Companies are trying to keep their information local, trying to protect it from ending up being published through AI systems. You see the implementation of governance measures, and that's a major challenge facing the IT industry in the sense that the governance measures aren't there yet. They have to be imagined and implemented, and that in a cost-effective manner. And you're seeing partnership models where AI providers, AI developers are working together with local cloud providers to come up with new solutions. Now, there's a whole closing and call to action bit, but rather than go into these details, I think that I'd like to spend 30 seconds on my main concern, and that is, I personally believe that as lawyers, as jurists, we have, and also as regulators, we have a dreadful responsibility not to fall for the shiny. Not to fall for the story that this wonderful new thing, and you know, I was talking to my taxi driver this morning. One of the biggest benefits of automobiles in the past was the fact that they cleaned up cities. You know, we'll say, yes, but cars pollute. Yes, but imagine a world where transportation is dependent on having the horse on the street. Horses do not wait, they do their business on the street, and you can imagine transporting 8 billion people around the world and the amount of horses you have, and you're having a different sort of nitrogen crisis than what we have here in the Netherlands. So the fact that there is new technology does not mean that the basic rules change. The basic rules that we need to deal with are those of transparency, of basic fairness, and also clear communication. I think that also going to the question of crises and how do you deal with crises, I think that we'll agree quickly that the way you communicate, the way that you understand your counterparty, that ultimately is the key to getting the message across and controlling any crisis. Giles, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think so. I think in any crisis, two of the biggest issues we find is speed and... Thank you. I think in any crisis, two of the biggest issues, one is speed, when there's a void, and speculation and fake news fills that void. So I think, especially in a world where we have pretty much a 24-hour news cycle now, so no one's ever off. So I think it's really, really important as well. I think also in those situations, companies and firms' own media channels become more and more important in terms of getting the message out, so you get the unvarnished truth from sources people trust, because really you've got this perfect storm of technology upending industries overnight and the media having its own existential crisis. So, you know, people aren't buying newspapers anymore, people aren't watching broadcasts, news bulletins, they're consuming their news from a variety of sources which often aren't checked, aren't corroborated. And that in itself can be incredibly dangerous, especially when you're thinking about things like public health crisis. So, yeah, the way you communicate becomes more and more important in this environment where everyone is a journalist now, because everyone can broadcast on their own platforms in a way they couldn't before.
And can I add? A lot of companies use interception in ChatGPT and Enza. I see how it can be done. You can come to ChatGPT and ask him, what is the best firm in, I don't know, home cosmetics? He will say, Procter & Gamble, la 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 la. You will say, 5 people in the world will say, no, I think it's Johnson & Johnson. He will say, you're right. And this information will be included.
Machine learning.
Yes, and in 20 days, Procter & Gamble or the company which was mentioned by somebody like the best, it will be the best in ChatGPT.
Just to latch on to that, there's a great book by an author called Neil Stevenson. Oh, good grief. The title is just... okay, but it introduces the concept of bogons, namely purposely generated bogus information used to pollute data systems. And at the end of the day, I think that we're going to see some really serious bogon warfare taking place through AI systems, where interested parties intentionally pollute, possibly through the use of AI systems and AI agents, the learnings of other people's AI.
Can I add? And I've been thinking that if, for example, group of people works on positioning a brand as a world-class brand, or like, I don't know, very much required brand, if, for example, thousands of people from different angles of the world start writing it down, it could be an excellent marketing tool.
They do it.
Yes.
They do it now.
Yes.
And
even from the perspective of politics as well, actually. For example, when you try to understand, like 2-3 countries are in war, and you want to know which one was right because you don't have any idea, you are not from there, and you ask a question, and all of a sudden it generates an answer that does not have I don't know, anything to do with the reality. And then you realize that as previously there was no such data on internet. How come it generates such idea?
Can I add?
Yeah.
First of all, yes, the marketing agencies began to offer such service like creating of adding company in AI programs, and I know exactly that Microsoft has already understood it, and now they are working on some program which will try to analyze if the information inserted to the ChatGPT has some features of advertising, and they will give even paid opportunity to use it, but it has to be marked as advertising, something like that.
Yeah, I know that Google have been looking at this where they're trying to now prioritize traditional news sources more as an antidote to what's going on. So take the Financial Times, take The Economist, take CNN, BBC, that's coming up more on the first page of Google because there's so much stuff out there. And I do think there's a wider problem in terms of education and children in schools and fact-checking and the corroboration of sources, which is really problematic when you see where people are getting their information from. You know, and there's obviously a lot's been said about Russia trying to affect the outcome of the 2016 presidential election, no doubt 2020, Brexit as well. There's a lot of speculation about them piling in there. I don't think any government that I have seen has really got on top of the issue of AI and the knock-on effect of fake news and how that can be so problematic. And you think about all the sort of black swan moments we have now in the world, whether it's been COVID, whether it's been the Ukraine war, whether it's been Gaza, Brexit, which was unexpected. I think this is becoming more and more normal, like disruption is becoming normal, and I don't think we're remotely geared up to dealing with it.
Let's thank Pavle for the presentation. Thanks a lot. And Pavle has mentioned the EU AI Act, and this is a practical tip for all our today's attendees, whether you are from Europe or beyond. Indeed, there is a new act which was adopted here in Europe, and this is about the governance that companies has to ensure in terms of AI. And even if you are not from Europe, I would recommend you as a consultant or as a lawyer to check this out, because if there is any connection with Europe, that would mean that this act will be applied to you as well. Just practical steps you can do, and I would recommend you to check the Ministry of Economy of the Netherlands has adopted a very good guide. The Netherlands is very good in explaining in a very plain and simple languages a lot of difficulties that you might not be aware of in terms of the technical language or not being in AI as such. Basically, what I would recommend when you come back to your company to check what systems you use, if there is any risky areas, because according to the EU AI Act, some areas, for example, related to health and things like that, might qualify you as a more risky provider or deployer. There's also a terminology there. And then I would recommend you to check this act to see if there are any requirements that will be applicable to you. And this act is already in force, and the active part will be in 2026. And as long as we're talking today about so rapidly changing legislation, I can tell you even here in Europe, a lot of things are just not regulated so far. People from Calais, from the airways are saying, we don't know, for example, if this act at what extent it applies to us, because there are no rules, but they will come. So just stay aligned with all these new regulatory changes about what we're talking today. And as we understand, not everything is regulated, as we're discussing. And talking about creative minds, Ganna, will you share your innovative approaches of creating something to be hopefully legal, yes, and at the same time a good legal solutions for these new crypto regulations?
Okay. Hello, my name is Ganna. I am from Ukraine, and I was asked to talk about Ukrainian experience, but the question is the following. Yes, in 2022, Ukraine became the 5th country in the world in the question of adoption of crypto. That was not only because of the war, which made us to do a lot of transactions, to pay to army, to do all different good things, but also we have a lot of projects there which developed many good things. Today I want to talk about a little bit another situation. I am also the expert in MICA, and thanks to our experience we have created a firm in Estonia and in Poland which is called Manimama, and yes, we are helping different projects to receive license if it is needed or avoid license if it's not needed. This is our main, I think, strong power, because sometimes, of course, it is easy to say to a client that yes, you need license, but sometimes he is not ready at all, not to obtain the license, but to proceed with it. And in what we are good also, yes, we have submitted around 8 applications for MICA in Czech Republic, in Lithuania, and now we are preparing documentation in Bulgaria and Poland as well, which still didn't adopt the law because they are thinking and looking at the market. But I have another experience which I want to share. This is called what is beyond MICA. How to work avoiding MICA restrictions which we have. I'm talking about tokenization. According to MICA, we have the following rule. MICA expresses and declares that it regulates 3 types of tokens. Asset reference tokens, this is a new tokenization rule which is connected with what? With creation of token which proves the ownership on some real world asset. It is told like this, on the stable price of this real world asset, but it's not fiat money. Because when we are talking about fiat money, one type of fiat money, we are talking, of course, about e-money tokenization. Yes. Here we are talking about electronic money institution which issues just electronic money on the blockchain. And this became the problem for USDT, who decided not to obtain the license of e-money, and they left the market officially. But in reality, this is the cryptocurrency. I think it is on the second place of importance after Bitcoin today. The asset reference token became a really challenging for market because in reality nobody uses it for today. We don't have a lot of practice because of very high requirements to the projects, and we found the ways how to avoid it. I will tell you, and this is a very good solution which we even which was approved by BaFin. BaFin is a very mean structure, but when I met BaFin on the first time in my life, the head of department of regulation of financial department, he said, we are not a mean regulated, just stop sending us bullshit, he said, because when we see the papers of so-called lawyers, we are shocked. We are not mean, we are normal. So what we did? In Ukraine, we have a lot of projects, Invest Ukraine, which considered not to be so dangerous, like Kyiv, like all these cities. They are in Western Ukraine, which is near Hungary, near Poland. This is Lviv, Bukovel, and other places. And there are a lot of hotels which are very interesting for investment from Europe as well. Meaning that there are a lot of investors who want to organize, who are ready to invest in building of new hotels, in buying land, and so on. So we understood that taking into account, MICA tells the following, and this is very clear. We don't regulate securities. Security tokens are regulated by MiFID, by MiFIR, and this is another regulation. And principally we understand that this regulation can be used, and sometimes it will be much more simple to use it. How we do it? We use 2 other countries, which this is US, Wyoming State, and Marshall Islands. Both these jurisdictions have very specific law, which is called the law about DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, meaning that we can create the company which is managed by smart contract. What does it mean? We create the company and we create in the investment pool shared capital. It is like a partnership of many, many people. smart contract which is publicly visible, and while incorporation of the company in Wyoming or in Marshall Islands, we inform the regulating authority about the address of smart contract which controls the company, and it cannot be changed. It can be changed but under some specific conditions. So we are creating smart contract, and for instance, we want to gather several million euros to invest to Ukraine, to Bali, to Thailand, a lot of interesting projects all over the world. We are creating the DAO, we are issuing tokens which are in reality the shares of the company, we make KYC procedure, we use exemption S in US because this is an offshore deal, we don't have right to work with Americans. We tokenize in reality the shared capital of the company. We provide solicitation of the clients in non-regulated countries, and we can even do this in Europe. How it is done? In Europe we have security market regulation, which is principally understood, and it exists for 11 years. We are talking about MiFID regulation, we are talking about prospectus directive regulation. What it gives us? It gives us opportunity, first of all, to issue tokens which are completely security, because in our situation token is the share of the company, no way, it is security. And if we raise up to 1 million per year, we don't need prospectus. If we raise from 1 million to 8, we can provide a local attraction of investment in different parts of Europe, meaning that we can go to one country and to make solicitation. So now we are helping one American project as well to do it in Ireland, because in Ireland everybody is doing offer of securities on crowdfunding platforms, which is another regulation of Europe, came into force in 2024, directive about crowdfunding platforms, meaning the legislation which gives opportunity to create the marketplace, which gives opportunity to the projects to attract investment through issuing of security, and the obligation of control on these companies, if they attract investment not more than 5 million euros per year, is on crowdfunding platform. This is also what we do. So we use American DAO or Marshall Island DAO to attract investment, avoiding investors of these countries, issuing security token, and if we want to go to some specific state, even in Europe, we are analyzing European local terms and we do it there. Also, for this concrete moment, we are helping one project to provide the same in Poland. In Poland, they want to attract investment. They even were not thinking about Poland. Polish guys, Polish developers, and this was my advice. I said, guys, we have a lot of Ukrainians in Poland, and Ukrainians, they are always crazy. You understand? After the mindset of Ukrainian people was changed completely after the war, because the war showed them that nothing is real. You have a house in Mariupol, I'm from Mariupol, and now you don't have house in Mariupol. But I have my crypto, and I'm very happy that I have my crypto, because in this situation, this is something which is in reality more easier to defend. And another, if I have time, I want to talk about one more case, which is really asset-backed token, but we understand that it will be a little bit complete for a project to do it in Europe. When we are talking about asset reference tokens, according to MiCA, we can avoid obtaining permission if, as always, if we work with qualified investors and do attraction only among them, and only qualified investors hold this. And if you do the offer not more than 5 million euro again. So it is again like crowdfunding. But at the same time, we have a case now with people from Switzerland who want to tokenize gold. This is a new idea. Everybody in Dubai, in Middle East, everybody wants to tokenize gold. Why? Because they have a lot of gold, and in reality, custodian of this gold is so expensive, so that really they need investment because the expenses are very high. What we did, and we understand that if you do it, and they said, don't do it in Europe, we beg you, because we know about asset reference, and we don't want to do that in Europe for today. Okay, so I gave the task to my team and asked them what to do, where to go, because previously we had one very good solution, which was Liechtenstein. Liechtenstein had a trusted technology service provider license, but now Liechtenstein joined MiCA. So again, we don't have this. And we found another solution, which is Singapore. Singapore has a very old law, which is called Digital Payment Service Act 2017. They don't have regulation about asset reference token. They have very strict regulation about securities, for sure. They have regulation about stable coins. It is additional, but they have their own act, Digital Payment Service Act. And they have a very interesting regulation, which is called Digital Payment Token. This is a token which is not governed by other concrete legislation, and to provide, but it is the unit of value backed by something from the real world, and if it is the means of exchange, you can issue it, but if you want to provide turnover and circulation and custodian, you will need to get the license. The license is possible to obtain. So we have a lot of cases in reality. And this is one of the main tasks is to analyze the business very properly and to understand in reality what is it. Because sometimes what I like in crypto, because the same like my colleague when she said when I came to Bitcoin I never did nothing again. My partner, Swan, he is not a lawyer, he is a business person. He said we need to expand our experience to another field. I said, for what? It is a way only to the future, because we have so much work. And every day, and now, for instance, when we're talking about Brazil, which is very interesting, because people want to go further. Everybody is interested in Latam, in Africa, in Asia. And this is a main issue that everybody looks at it in different way. Finalizing my speech, I will tell you that now I am finishing, I have finished in reality, but I'm waiting. I finished my PhD thesis in Ukraine, which is about forming of international standards of classification of tokens in Europe. And what I see, what I am proud of, that I have created the terminology, the vocabulary, and you can't, a person cannot even imagine that only the meaning and the naming of crypto asset, it is for 5 pages of dictionary. How a different country with its national risk assessment understands crypto. So that is why, honestly, I can do it for many, many minutes and hours, but I need to stop. And I hope it was important. And if somebody wants to talk about it in coffee or dinner, please come.
I do.
Thank you so much. Ganna, it was really interesting, and thank you for being creative. And I have a very provocative question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Well, in 1930s in the US, and maybe there is some expert in the US law who would correct me, the United States has adopted, I think, what they called blue sky laws to regulate the securities market for avoiding possible scamming. The idea is with MiCA, the European regulation, probably is the same, just to adopt kind of securities type of regulation to prevent fraud. Because as Pavle has said, the technology is changing, the approaches look the same. I'll give you an example. In Ukraine, indeed, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, it was a trend for everyone to be in crypto. And everyone, there was such a fashion to do ICOs, which is initial coins offering. Basically, it's like offering shares But in case of shares, you have securities legal regulation that regulates things. At that time for ICOs, there was no such regulation, meaning welcome scammers and fraudsters. Timur, bring your money and maybe you'll get back. Most likely no. As a lawyer, as an expert in this industry, how you would recommend us to check things, not to be involved in a scam scheme in the crypto world? What should we check before being unqualified investors? What things are important? Because indeed some companies are using different methods to use different countries where they can probably get or not get license to avoid additional regulatory burdensome. But how, as a person, as individual, we can be ensured that we will not be scammed?
Thanks. Yes, you are right. We understand that, firstly, we can use any law at the beginning, but of course we need to rely on the law of the target audience. And it means that if you are targeted by somebody, it is better to go to his website, to look at his white paper, is it exist principally. Because in any countries, including MiCA, what is the main aim of MiCA? I guess there are two aims of MiCA. First, harmonizing of legislation, so that in Germany everybody understands how the Lithuanian or Polish company behaves. Because I don't need to search for Lithuanian legislation, I understand that I have MiCA and I understand how it is done. This is the first issue. The second issue is to defend the rights of investors. And according to MiCA, and I have a lot of, you understand, I think that regulation of an attraction of investment is very strict and it is everywhere. I honestly can't remember the country which doesn't regulate securities at least somehow. And because when you go to Thailand, for instance, it is over-regulated. And in this situation, the government always defends its market. So if you see the advertising in Facebook or in LinkedIn or in Google, which are very strict in organizing their advertising companies for these people, because in every country, except regulation, marketing campaign regulation exists. So principally, when you want to buy something, you need to go to the website of the company, you need to ask for white paper, ask for legal opinion from a lawyer, because you have two options. Is the company has a license, or is the company has a legal opinion backed by a local law firm and the firm which supports the legal framework in the country where I attract the investment. So, of course, but who did it when Trump coin appeared? I personally bought it because I was so sure that the guy will end all wars in the world. He ended 7, which I don't understand which. But what to say, in this situation, the guy, by the way, very interesting case of Trump coin, and very interesting case for MiCA, because MiCA says what? We have 3 types of token, and the third type is very interesting. It is called other tokens, including utility. And from my point of view, I understand that other tokens also covers meme coins. Why? But MiCA tells the following. While you are issuing and offering other type of token, or any other type of token, first of all, you need to be very honest and transparent. Meaning that you have to create the declaration which is understood even to very non-qualified person. And Trump issuing his meme coin, he did it under one legal entity, and he said, this is a meme coin, guys. It's not backed by anything. And people who bought it, like me, I understood that it is not backed. I was buying it for speculation. Because, and principally, MiCA today gives possibility to issue meme coin, but you have to be very clear and explain, guys, this is meme coin. It doesn't give you any right. Just understand that if you sell it in the right moment, yes, you will earn, but you can lose everything when everything is bad. So in this situation, the regulation, the times of ICO, it was like 2017, it was bad time. Bad time for somebody who didn't, in reality, this is a situation, we have always one advice: don't invest what you can't lose. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we have panelists would like to comment.
Yeah,
Mary,
yeah,
Pavle?
yeah.
Yes.
I would so talk to you for ages, but actually I have a question. When I was looking through Mika and trying to understand the basics of asset referenced tokens, crypto assets, I came to a conclusion that they could be backed up by fiat, by other types of assets, anything, I mean. Not like e-tokens that could be referenced only to fiat, but the asset reference tokens, they can be backed up by a basket of assets, including fiat. Because when you said that they can be attached to fiat, that posed a problem, well, a question at least. And the second question is that we talk that Mika doesn't refer to security tokens. But when now the MiCA is in stage of being implemented, in different jurisdictions, countries treat crypto assets either as security or as ordinary property. Do you think that there is some kind of contradiction in such interpretation? And the third one, when my country was to implement, like to vote an internal national law on crypto assets, what the legislation did in terms of if you want weighting the risk, it said that at this stage the banks as financial institutions are not anyhow enrolling in any crypto related activities, services, but only issuing tokens on your own e-money. That's it. That's the only thing that we can do at this stage. So I'm wondering, as a creative person, what do you think? How can that specter turn into business for banks?
Thanks. Yes, first, about asset reference tokens, I was not very clear. It is told like this: it cannot be backed by one fiat money. It can be backed by basket, let's say.
Yes.
In this situation, honestly, sometimes I was trying to consider if USDT is a e-money or asset reference, because it is backed by everything. It is backed by different investment contracts, by something nobody understands. But yes, we understand that it is like equal to $1 in our understanding, but it is like not your money. What else? What about securities? Yes. Mika just tells the following. I think it closed the gap. That it says, if your token has features of securities, please go to MiFID. But honestly, for me, it took some time to understand what is asset reference token in reality. Because yes, we understand that it is a real world asset, but we were shocked when we understood, not shocked, but it was like a very interesting feature. According to Mika, I can't generate interest on asset token. But of course, but the main goal of security is to generate passive income, because this is a highway test. So in this situation, I was thinking, okay, what is it? I was trying to find the practical case in my life. And at the same time, I am remembering the security market in US. Sorry, when I buy shares of Coca-Cola, I don't receive dividends. The only right is to buy and sell.
Yes.
So in this situation, if to compare, like practically, it is like asset reference token, but backed by share, something like that. So honestly, when we are talking about asset reference token, what I can say, I think that we will have a lot of trials with regulating authorities, and lawyers will make a lot of money explaining that the nature of this token is not the same as you see.
Sounds very optimistic. Hopefully, as a lawyer, you will be involved in all these
Yes.
big money things. Yes, Pavle, please, very short remarks, because we are waiting for crisis.
Yes.
Crisis management presentation. I'm not talking about on the
It's not a
time.
crisis yet.
Yeah, not crisis yet. Okay, please.
I just want to make some comment about this question, because actually it's a very difficult question, but in my opinion, security is very specific. In Brazil, for example, we have a list of securities. It means that it doesn't matter if, for example, the Apple share does not give you dividends, for example. Share is a security. Then a token of a share for Apple is a security. And sometimes you have a token wherein you will have remuneration, but it's not a promise of the token. And even when you receive a remuneration wherein it's not a promise of a token, it's not a security. Because it's the nature of some tokens does not promise remuneration, but give remuneration because of the nature of the token. And it depends mostly not of the opinion of the lawyers, for example, but of the opinion of the organism of financial of the country. Exactly. In Brazil, we have the CVM, is the Brazilian CIC, for example. CIC has a very open definition of security. In the beginning, the American CIC thought that Ethereum is a security. No, it's not. But nowadays,
Future contract.
nowadays they changed their opinion. But at the beginning, they thought Ethereum is a security. No, it's not. Then, in our practice of lawyers, I think that we have to adapt for each legislation, because actually security is a very we use in Brazil the Hoey test to identify what is a security. I hate it. Hoey test is from 40s.
Yeah.
We need to evaluate this this concept.
Thank you. Such a fascinating world of crypto assets. Pavle, yeah, do you have a remark? And then we have a crisis, yeah? Once again.
We don't, hopefully.
What I was going to say, I was going to tie into the remark that Charles made, which I think is very important when dealing with ICOs and similar issues. Namely, there's the matter of education and there's the matter of awareness. Because we can discuss underlying assets, we can discuss classifications, but at the end of the day, if somebody is selling you a meme coin of the Hog to a girl, there's a very old Latin adage, namely caveat emptor. And for me, it's more a question of educating citizens and educating investors that you stay away from meme coin ICOs unless you want a pure roulette effect. And that, for me, is the matter of how do we get the average audience aware of all the risks that they're undertaking.
And by the way, I will be very short. And it is a very good question, and I'm very happy that now, again, according to Mika, we received such type of activity which is called consulting in crypto. Yeah. Because before that, a lot of bloggers and influencers in internet using YouTube explained everything. Now they are not. It's not possible to do like that, because now if you want to tell yes, you can buy this, you need the license, and before obtaining this license, you need to prove that you are not corrupted and you are very smart and have experience.
Yeah, you understand.
We will see how it will work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's a good time. Please, and you see what the panel is talking about, that sometimes the regulators change their opinions, and you don't want to be in this company for whom the rules just suddenly has changed, and then you have and you need crisis management. Sir, can you help us and please tell us about your work for
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister?
Yeah, look, I will try and keep this brief because I appreciate we are coming up to lunch. But yeah, as way of background, I was spokesman to the UK Prime Minister between 2013 to 2016. So I think I saw pretty much every crisis which is possible. Although maybe very occasionally I can still be shocked. A lot of people say to me, a lot of companies are like, well look, we're not a public-facing company, so we don't need any crisis management protocols in place, we don't need any training. Just to give you a bit of context, there was a report by PricewaterhouseCoopers which said that 95% of companies in Europe over the past 3 years have faced some form of business disruption, whether that's been hacking, data leaks. So why is it important? Well, the explosion in cyber attacks, even if you're not a public-facing company, you're going to be, if you are hit by this and the data leaks out, it all becomes about trust. Why else? We see an increasing number of cases where disgruntled staff, whistleblowers, can just take to the media and vent their anger, and quickly those clips can go viral, and companies can find themselves in a crisis, can be existential, seeing share prices sliding, customers dumping them as well. So what can an organisation do to guard, to mitigate if they are faced with a crisis? Well, I would say that you can pretty much predict 95% of crises that come up at the moment. We just touched upon them there. The majority are cyber attacks, disgruntled staff, and then fake news and AI, which obviously we touched upon pretty much extensively here, and we're seeing more and more opponents, your competitors putting out fake news about people. And in this situation, actually, your own channels become more and more important because you say, look, this is where we're getting the unvarnished truth. And it's a very difficult time for businesses in the regulatory environment because whilst you've had this explosion of AI, for good and for bad, you've also had a decline in traditional media news sources that we touched upon earlier on. So decline in people reading newspapers, people watching TV news. They are increasingly getting their news off TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and often that news hasn't been checked, is unverified, but people are taking it as the truth, which is posing many problems for people. So look, what is a checklist of good practice when you find yourself in a crisis, and what can you do to mitigate the risk? A lot of this is actually pretty straightforward and common sense, but it's amazing how many organisations don't do it. Having a clear sign-off procedure, like who is going to actually sign off the statements, identifying who your spokespeople are beforehand. Typically you only need 1 or 2 people. Often problems arise when you've got multiple people saying multiple things to the press and there isn't a consistency of message. Identifying who your key stakeholders and investors are. It's important they hear directly from you, not from the media, not from what they're reading online, and then, crucially they hear from you first. This is often overlooked, but having a really clear and coherent internal comms plan. Often we find, especially with big companies, when they're amidst of a crisis, that information will start leaking out, and it will start leaking out from disgruntled staff who feel like they're not getting the full truth, and there isn't full transparency from the management. So what's your plan in terms of how are you keeping staff updated continuously? As I've touched upon there, your own media channels are incredibly important to get the message out. What the monitoring you do is really, really important. We live in a 24-hour news cycle, so you need to be monitoring what's happening hour by hour, and that will, to some extent, dictate how you're going to react. It may be that you need to be doing updated statements to the press 3 times a day, 4 times a day, 5 times a day. And then we always say, have a holding statement ready. And I think you can write all these beforehand. Even if it's just like, we take this matter very seriously, we're looking at it closely, we will come back to it. It shows that you care, it shows that you're on top of things. It's when there's that big void of silence in the media, when something happens, when there's perhaps, British Airways or KLM have had a data breach, that it almost becomes impossible for brands to recover. So yeah, and that leads me on to my next sort of final point, the common mistakes. Delay is a huge thing, and I'd say like during COVID, for instance, one of the biggest mistakes of the UK government was they held a press conference every day at 5 p.m, which was good in terms of keeping the country updated, releasing information, ensuring transparency and accountability. But the problem they had was that between 9 and 5 during the day, there was so much wild speculation, whether that was on the TV news, whether that was in the papers, whether it was online, whether it was in the media, and you had a lot of unaccountable background briefing going on, which created more fear and panic in the midst of a national crisis. I think the real mistake they made there was, instead of having the press conference at 5, they should have had one at sort of 9 or 10, and then one at 5 as well. So even if you didn't have anything new to say, it's important to reassure people and put the scientists up in front of the public, take the politics away from it, and give people the unvarnished truth. What else do we see? A lack of empathy and often a qualified apology. You know, I'm sorry if I've offended anyone. You're not actually apologising at all. You're just sorry you've been caught. And I'd say like one of the sort of biggest PR gaffes which still endures today was the chief executive of BP in 2010 when there was an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, which was the biggest oil spill in US history at the time, was all across the TV bulletins, and the chief exec said, I just want my life back, and I think subsequently had to resign. So there you go, lack of empathy can cost you your job. Not communicating with your staff, as we've talked about, and then, you know, another one that I've seen recently was Facebook Meta, when they came under fire over the use of people's data in the Cambridge Analytica scandal. They didn't do anything, and there had been a lot of pressure on them previously to tackle things like fake news. And then eventually, about 2 months after the scandal broke, they were taking out adverts in The Economist saying, oh, we've got these fact checkers, all these moderators, but yeah, it was 2 or 3 months after the event. And all that says to you, to the customer, to the public, to your readers, is like, we've been forced into doing this. We don't actually want to do it. Which, once again, I think you're seeing a lot more, especially with the growth and the power of social media, is that customers can vote with their feet and really go after brands and bring them down. And I think, allied with this world that we're in, where technology is upending industry overnight, it can be an incredibly dangerous moment for brands if they don't have crisis comms protocols in place and act quickly. And we often use the analogy that speed kills, that you have to move really, really quickly. So yeah, thank you. I'm taking questions.
Thanks a lot. Please have a seat. We have 3 minutes left, and maybe it's a time for voting, and then we have time for a couple of questions. Yes, actually, I have posted a survey at LinkedIn with a question: what do you see as the biggest compliance challenge for organizations in the digital era? What do you see as the biggest compliance challenges for the organization in the digital era? There are 3 answers: technology, culture, or regulation. So let's vote. What, and then we can compare with what we have heard from LinkedIn people. What do you see as the biggest compliance challenge for organizations in the digital era? Technology. Who would say that that's the biggest challenge?
Regulation.
Okay, who would say that it is technology? Please raise your hand. Not that many. Who would think that the biggest challenge for organizations in the digital era is culture? Or regulation?
No.
What do you think? What was the majority?
Culture.
What we got at LinkedIn: 6% for technology, 61% for culture, and 33% for regulation. As it was only 18 votes, maybe it was not very representative.
It is representative. Look, our reputable colleague talked about crisis management, and for me, culture, it is sometimes equal to business continuity.
Right.
Because people, we have a lot of clients who come to us. They are not clients, they are leads. We are startup. Do something. I say, guys, I can't be so sure that in 3 months you will not disappear. They don't understand the culture of business. They are just thinking, oh, we are in blockchain, we will do as we want, and they don't understand the culture of business. This is a problem. They don't think about crisis management. They disappear, and I think this is the biggest problem. Regulation, in reality, yes, it looks hard, but our company has its own WASP, and we are going to apply for MiCA. Honestly, by preparing the documentation, I have changed so many business processes in my company because I understood I had to do that.
Sounds as a practical tip. And Jules, please, your comment, and we have time for one question left. So if you have something to ask from our distinguished panelists, it will be a good time, right? Yeah, thanks. So we have a comment from Jules, and please then ask a question.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think most of the problems we see come down in businesses down to trust, which comes down to accountability, which comes down to transparency, whether that's about gender pay gaps, whether that's about pay differentials, whether that's supply chains and what's going on. And that feeds into the overall culture. And that also feeds into staff retention in the business. If you have good staff retention, then you have less people likely to speak out, to be whistleblowers. And obviously the longer people stay, that is better for your business. But we do see the whole issue of staff retention really hard, especially said with AI and technology, because the idea of a job for life has pretty much gone now.
Please, yeah.
Yes,
30
very
seconds.
short. Sometimes when clients come and they want to benefit from service and the banks start asking questions and explaining for hours that we have to be KYC compliant, etc., the client complains saying, why the hell do I have to answer all those questions? I do not want to disclose this, that, and there are issues.
Culture. Indeed.
So,
yes,
culture,
thank you.
yeah.
Emilia, please.
As a defender of the regulation as the best product, what I have to say is regulation, even in Brazil, is very expensive. Mm-hmm. The cost to achieve the regulation is very expensive. This can be an obstacle for the entrepreneurs. Even in US, when they created the BIT license in New York in 2013 or 2015, I don't remember, they have 33 companies working in the crypto environment. When they come to the BIT license, the cost to obtain a license was $150,000. 30 companies closed the door. Just 3 remain. One connected with a big bank, and 2 other big companies. I think that in this sense, the regulation can be an obstacle.
Thank you. Do you remember how we got started saying, yeah, it's very difficult to be compliant, and I'm in compliance for 17 years in terms of timing, so that's why we'll have a chance.
Very quick, yeah.
Whom you want to ask?
Yeah, well, in general to the panelists, let's say, with what are the, for example, application to the application, for example, of anti-money laundering rules of prevention of terrorism are working with, let's say, the cryptocurrencies, especially because how are you backing up, as it was, well, you were talking today about how the securities are backed up, let's say, with going back to the source of funds of that are being funded for these cryptos, how can it be verified and how far are we in that point? Is it something that we are safe at the moment, or are there still a lot of risks?
Thank you for your question. As long as in compliance in legal, we are first of all trying to serve the public interest. If you allow, I would ask one of our participants to answer. Emilia, could you please reply? And in case if there are anything else that you would like to hear from other panelists,
More than eating?
it will be good to do that during lunch. All right.
Once again,
Emilia, please.
small one.
Of course, that we have in this technology, we have one point that it's very good to do the compliance. We have the technology aspect, and in the crypto area, we have one more requirement than in traditional financial sector. That is the know your transaction, the KYT. Know your transaction is a way to understand the origin of the transaction inside the blockchain. And this is new, and this is not possible in the traditional financial market. Then it's not only possible to make compliance in the crypto segment, then it's possible to make a more broadly compliance with the technology too. That is the blockchain, because blockchain is an amazing tool to understand the way of the assets in the financial. With money, we cannot do that.
Which cannot be changed.
Yes, exactly. It's
And
immutable.
travel rule.
And
Thank you. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you for being that engaging. Yes, we have very small
one small comment.
One small comment, please. Thank you for being that engaging. I hopefully that nobody will kill me. Yes, please, 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. No, I think culture always takes a front seat. The reason being, if you're talking about the compliance, culture, or regulation, compliance is also kind of a culture, If you have a culture of a compliances, then only you will be taking the compliance very seriously. As you know, the compliance officer, it's always a matter of culture. You have to convince people that this compliance is required. So I think even in compliance or regulation, you can hire third party, you can hire consultants, you can do whatever you want to do. But for culture, you need to do yourself. You have to work at yourself. No third party is going to advise you on your culture. So that's a culture which is always in a front seat, according to me. I'm a very firm believer of that.
Thanks. So it was a great practical tip, and please give a round of applause to such a fascinating, engaging, and passionate speakers. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. It was really hot.